So
So maybe that's the screenshot for this episode is Detective Kinderman the perfect on-screen cop?
I know, no, I straight like that. Is Detective Kinderman the best on-screen cop?
All right, hi everybody. It's our first episode of Cinemen podcast. I'm Michael Cole,
And I'm Alex.
and we are here. Every week we're gonna be talking about a different movie that we watched. We decided we want to kind of talk about uh, not only the movie, but we want to focus in on a specific thing every week. And so for this week's episode, we're going to be watching The Exorcist and talking about sound. We'll review the whole movie. We'll talk about the development of the movie, but we do want to focus in on that one element as something to talk about specifically when we get to that point. So just so that we can kind of, what can we learn? What did this movie do right with this element? Now, we picked sound before we watched the movie because it won Best Sound at the Oscars. So that's how we picked that. That won't always be the case. One of our movies this month is going to be Hard Eyes, which A, hasn't hit a awards season, and B, I don't expect it to win anything from what I've heard. So we're going to have to just kind of do a little research on what we want to focus on that. But for this week, The Exorcist, it was a fairly clear winner that we were going to do sound.
Yeah.
All right.
And I mean, before you even started, I was saying that being this is one of my probably less than 3 watch throughs of the film, the sound is so deliberate. You know what, that is a really good phrase to put in it. It's deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Yep.
idea that the director has obvious moments where it's just going to hang, obvious
Yeah.
moments where there's a distinct lack of sound. When I mean that is it's just ambient, it's just background, it's
Yeah.
just tubular bells. So in those situations, I think that
I'm
Friedkin,
gonna
huh?
So I'm going to keep a tally on screen when I'm editing this of how many times you say tubular bells. Because
I mean, I
we,
like Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells. It is a distinct favorite record. So the fact that it ended up here, yeah.
yeah,
So Friedkin, I think, really, really almost weaponized realism. So instead of even a big score, I mean, I think the music credits are only like 3 or 4 total for a film, which is modern films. They are multiple pages when the credits roll.
mhm,
So you get room sounds, you get machines, you get wind, you get silence. There's so many aspects where the entirety of a scene can just be 2/3, 1/3 of it even made up of just what the place sounded like. And it
yeah,
was it was almost more documentary than it was the silence, being this one time that everybody can remember. No, there were points throughout the film where
oh
just
yeah.
silence was used, and I like that.
I think one of the things I noticed sound wise was how good the mix is. Like, this might be one of the best sound mixes I've ever heard, from the sense that when sometimes you eat like a smoothie and you can't pick out individual flavors, and then
Yeah,
other times you eat a burrito and you can taste the guac and the meat, and you can taste them all as separate things. The audio was like that, where it was not like we get a lot of movies where in chaos there's a homogenized
yeah,
noise that comes out of it. This movie did not have that. This movie, you could hear the wind blowing on one level, while in the background you might have heard like the gibberish or the Latin, while you hear Marin saying the power of Christ. Like, you could hear all the layers at once,
Yeah.
and it didn't sound like one homogenized bleh, and
No.
that I literally was struggling as I listened to watched and listened to the movie to think of another movie that did that as well.
So,
Like, it's easy to do an
yes.
individual sound. It's difficult to do layers and be able to tell what all the layers are. You could, if you wanted to focus, you could just focus on her gibberish or whatever. You could
Yeah.
just focus on Merrin. You could focus on Karis repeating back, half a second behind. You could any one of those things you could focus on, and I don't know how they achieve that. I have zero idea how they achieve that.
So, technical nerd here was thinking the same thing. And I will say that it isn't that I believe it wasn't intentional, but I
Okay.
also believe that a large amount of the mix was that it was a movie of its time.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, in in the 70s, a film that was filmed in the early 70s for that matter, not only do you not have any digital ability at all. And when I say that, I mean the ability to legitimately and easily separate an audio track from a video track. You
Yeah.
also have limited budgeting for booms and and shotgun mics as opposed to condenser mics. So
Yeah.
when so an example of a movie of its time, even though sound is a very big part of it, in the early scenes when the her mother is downstairs and she's discussing with the help the work of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
her her vocal lines are way suppressed, and you
Yeah.
almost can hear the griddle with the bacon and the
Mm-hmm.
clanging of the porcelain on that countertop when she picks up the percolator pot and pours herself a cup of coffee. Like, there's so
Yeah.
many times where that visceral feel is because I bet you they ran one, if maybe two boom mics, and that was it. Like,
Okay.
I really do not think in any of those scenes where the director had more control, meaning it's in a house or in a
Yeah.
building, not outdoors. There were so many of those times that classic 70s thing where you can tell the sound was imposed in post because things like steps or
Mm-hmm.
stones crushing under a foot or something like that is like so amplified that there's no
Yeah.
way it was really that loud. Nothing ever felt unintentional when it
Yeah.
came to the sound, but there were definitely some moments where you knew it was an early 70s movie because there was not as many opportunities for something to stand out when there's too much going on in a room.
Yeah.
So my big things, these are notes that I took, was like the silence provided pressure
Mm-hmm.
that otherwise lines would have lines or visuals would have provided, and especially early on in the film before her possession takes a larger part of
Yeah.
the overall, is that there's not a lot of like visceral ugliness going on, so that silence is providing lots of pressure because especially if you're watching this now, you think, well, I know it's a horror movie, I know something
Yeah.
bad's about to happen, the head's about to turn around and all that jazz. um you've got the wind, I think, is a really big part
Yep.
of some of the outdoor sections.
Yeah.
And then my
But
big
sorry,
go.
I wanted to say also, like, you get a lot of there's a lot of realism lent to, like, the scene with Karis and his mother in her Brooklyn apartment. You can hear the neighbors,
Yeah.
and you can hear them clearly. You can hear Karis and his mother perfectly clear, but you can hear like the neighbors and the stuff around the neighborhood that you would hear if you were there, in a way that like we wouldn't do now. We would just you would
Yeah.
only have that in the background if it needed to be a hint, like, oh, the train.
Yes.
You like you wouldn't hear just that. You would like completely cut that crap out, and it worked so perfectly because it was no lack of of clarity in what they were saying, but it gave this realism to it too.
Yeah, and that is from a technical standpoint, that's very much what only having one boom can do.
Hmm.
Is you have to get everything. Like there's no way around if you only have one boom mic, there's no way around not catching a lot of ambient. And when
Yeah.
Karis was walking to his apartment, home on the train, when the person on the street says, you know, will you help an old altar boy?
Hmm.
The line that gets repeated later. Uh, so like that entire scene, again, movie of its time, there are definite moments where you can tell there was only one audio source. And when I say one audio source, I mean that boom mic that you see in those behind the scenes cuts where it's that big thing just hanging over the actors.
Hmm.
That is usually now you'd have one within reason per actor, and your best boy grip would kind of follow them along.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I think there was one, if maybe two, period, because
Yeah.
of how much ambient, like you said, the neighbors, or when Karis was walking home, you heard at a regular level, at a even level, all of the things environmentally around him as he was walking home. Whereas normally in the 70s, the classic trope would be he's mic'd up really well, but then there's like this intentional, like you said, like it's on purpose, loud, pushed way up in the mix, ambient sound of him walking or him running and the stones crushing under his foot, or or weather that's about to happen is way louder than it would ever really be in person, that kind of thing.
All right. So you mentioned before we started recording, and I felt kind of the same way. So first of all, what? How many times have you seen this movie? You said less. This is your third or less
Yeah,
time.
yeah, it's like my third watch through that I can even remember because I started to pick out scenes like, oh, I remember
Hmm.
that. And I was never allowed to watch something like this as a child.
Yeah.
I was never drawn to watch something like this as an adolescent. So all of these times have been when I'm a grown ass adult. So yeah,
Yeah. I thought that I had seen it all the way through before we started
that
watching
was
it.
totally one of mine.
I'm not positive I've ever seen it all the way through now. Well, now I have, but I'm not positive I had ever seen it all the way through because I don't remember much before. I don't remember almost anything before the possession starts.
I
Um,
was about to say the same thing. I have this in my head. Like, when's it gonna happen? When's she gonna
yeah,
turn green? When's the throw up in it? When's the head turning around? When's the puke coming? Like there were so many moments where I genuinely was expecting more, but
yeah,
because I again don't have any genuine memory of this, I'm thinking, well, I know it's coming because it is
yeah,
a horror movie. It's not a B slasher film. Like it's genuine good cinema, but
yeah.
when's the creepy shit gonna happen? You know?
Well, that's the funny thing too is like what I remembered of the movie. It's like I get that they did that well, but like this movie was nominated for Best Picture, and I knew all these Oscars it was nominated for, and I'm like, based on like what I remembered, I was like, maybe that's overselling. And then you open up to a scene that feels like we're going into Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Yeah. Well, oh,
like
oh, dude, the opener, I was like, am I? I kept
yeah,
swiping up on my remote. I'm like, okay, no, this is the Exorcist. All right, he's
yeah,
in
yeah,
Iraq. All right.
yeah, and we're doing that, and then and also that's a great sound mix too. With you've got the wind, you've got the like
Yeah.
call to prayer vocals that they've made purposely sound instrumental, and obviously because
Mhm.
they're in Iraq, it's supposed to be Islamic and uh, Pazuzu. They don't really mention this in the movie, or I didn't catch it in the movie, but I know that Pazuzu is a Sumerian demon in Sumerian folklore mythology.
Yeah.
So this isn't like, even though we're dealing with Catholicism as the religion, we're dealing with this outside of Catholicism demon, and so to bring in that, and I don't know if I'm being 100% honest, I don't know what the relationship to from Sumerian to Islam is, but we're in Iraq, we're hearing call to prayer kind of vocals, and it was really well mixed in a way that was like it felt both Raiders of the Lost Ark and like we're in the beginning of a horror movie. Like that was really good. Like it set us up for kind of, and obviously Raiders comes 8 years later, so they're not. But for me as a now it just feels like that's my when you see an old school archaeology scene, you think Raiders of the Lost Ark. Um,
You do.
but
You do.
I just think that set us up for like, okay, this is an adventure we're going on, and then also there was like, and it's going to be a creepy adventure, and
Yeah.
then we cut to present day, for them present day, DC, which I don't really think of many non-political movies taking place in DC, which was
True.
an interesting choice. Like, like you think of New York, you think of Chicago, you think of LA, but if you think of DC, you're thinking of political thrillers. You're thinking of,
Yeah.
especially at that time, you're thinking of Woodward and Bernstein, the president, all the President's
All the
Men.
presidents.
You're
Yeah.
not thinking about, and so you cut to Georgetown, which Georgetown has is it Jesuits? They have like a big presence of Catholicism, so it makes sense, it works, but it's it also gets rid of a lot of that familiarity that you would see from New York or
Yeah.
Los Angeles or Chicago in a movie. We're not seeing the stuff that you would see in a DC movie typically. You're not seeing the Washington Monument. You're not seeing
Oh, yeah.
the Capitol building or any of the political stuff at all. Even though
No.
there is politics in the movie in its own way, they're not you're not seeing those political thriller things. So you're kind of setting it up in this like different way of like this is not, you're thinking of DC as politics, but we're thinking of the people, the people who live here, the
Yeah.
Georgetown, and Jesuits and your average person, and obviously and then a movie star, and you've got this movie star coming in, and
I
that was sorry.
no. I really believed early on. I was like, why are we in okay, DC? What's the point? What's the purpose? And then when
Yeah,
you see that she's filming, when she's shooting a film that's
yeah,
specifically about political unrest, I'm like,
yep,
that's why we're here.
yeah.
But then it's curious that she has a whole house there. She
Yeah,
has a whole brownstone there. And I thought, wait a second. Okay, again, this is the 70s. It's interesting when a movie portrays a movie, but not have it really be the center of anything. Like, it's
yeah.
her job, and like, that's the only genuine connection I think it has to it being her job, because she could have
I
had a bunch of wealthy people at her parties,
yeah.
any job she had, but it's easy for the audience to place wealthy, divorced, mom, big party, lots of people.
Yeah.
Oh, she clearly is a movie star because this is the 70s. She's not going to be a CEO. She's
Right.
not going to be
Right.
any kind of place of prominence where she'd have all these wealthy friends.
And probably not a politician,
Oh,
at
definitely,
that point in
dude,
time.
no
Yeah.
way. So in this kind of situation, of course, she's in
Yeah.
entertainment. Like,
I also think it lends to, so you mentioned the brownstone, and they do it in passing towards, uh at some point when Reagan's talking about getting the horse, and she goes,
yeah,
maybe when we're done shooting and we go back home.
hmm,
So you realize that this is a rental, which in DC I think is very common that
yeah,
you would get a upscale rental because you have Congress people in and out and wealthy people in and out of these
yeah,
expense. So I think that lends it in that way as well, and so I think that's part of it. And then keeping it like, okay, well, she isn't gonna be. We can do this without really having much of the political. We don't have to have her be a politician or a lobbyist or anything else. This is a way that her life is glamorous, and this movie is going to be not glamorous, and so
Yes,
that's a
yeah,
contrast too. So
it
I
is.
think the setting her up as a movie star immediately gets you into like 3 or 4 of those easy, quick things, and I think that's I agree. Part way through the movie, I was like, it's weird that she's a movie star and that's not really doing much. And then I was like, oh well, it is making a lot of exposition and contrast immediately apparent without calling note to that's what it's doing.
Yeah, it was very much like well written, well shot, intentional use of a person's role or job in this
Mm-hmm.
case without making it just like obviously overt. Like for example, there was never a time where like people tried to come up and get her autograph or she was having to be whisked away for something because she's such a famous star. Like it was like that's her job and that's going to be sort of important later, but not
Yeah,
really. And I enjoyed that it was just purposeful for the sake of time and place and a little bit of character development, and then it was left alone. I,
yeah,
I enjoyed that that was not a big part of it. And actually, that was another time that sound was a little jacked up. And I'm pretty sure there's only 1 to 2 boom mics. When she's doing that scene that's in front of I think it's a church, I think.
I thought it was a school hall.
Sorry, that's right. School building.
Yeah,
Before when she's speaking to the director and you see Karis like way in the background, like kind of watching this take place.
yeah,
And when she's talking to him, there's so much going on that I backed that scene up like 3 or 4 times to try to. What are they all saying? What? What? Okay. Yeah. She's talking about why. She's talking about like her character and why she's there and all that. And then when you hear all of the classic like set call outs and everything before they start rolling, and then you see her walk up, and then she gets stopped by makeup, and she flicks them away. Like that
yeah,
was because I've been on the set of a film before. That was so that was so exactly how it goes, and it is absolute chaos behind the line
yeah,
of where the scene is, and then it's this weird controlled bubble on the other side.
yeah,
Every film set I've been on, that's what it's been like. It's like a zoo and then a weird wall and then what you see in front of a lens.
yeah,
So I, her job was just her job. Now, she
yeah,
could have been anything else. She could have been doing anything different. But I think her being an actress in film did add some legitimacy to the brownstone, the location, and the lavish parties and the
yeah,
kinds of people that would be at those parties.
yeah,
But then outside of that, it was just interesting meta to see a film in a film.
yeah. So I don't know how much of the movie, how much of the script and how, varies from the book. So I don't.
Yeah, I
So
don't either.
we'll just say writing wise, I want to give credit to the fact that like the fact that she's a movie star sets us up for a lot of things immediately.
Hmm.
They do such a good job with several things. So exorcism, you weren't raised Catholic. I was raised Catholic. Um, exorcism is not your everyday Catholic thing. We all know about it now because of this movie, but even outside of this movie, like we never talked about it at church or anything
No,
unless this movie came up, right? So like exorcism's just not a thing that your average person knows about,
it's
other than
true.
especially pre this movie.
Yeah.
So they had to establish that for us, the audience. They had to establish why anyone would recommend that she go to an exorcism when it's not a thing that is done regularly. Like they had all these difficulties to set up the premise of this movie, and they did them perfect. Like she's going to medical, and then finally a guy goes, "You may try an exorcism. It's not, there's nothing in your daughter demon wise, but like placebo effect is a real thing." And like that, like even from a skepticism point of view, they're like, okay, like this might do, like we've tried everything else. What's it gonna,
Yeah, and I like how the doctor's like, I mean, have you ever tried it? It's
Yeah,
almost like someone saying, "Have you tried Asian food?"
yeah,
It is so in passing, but it sets up the entire second half of the film.
yeah,
And
and it does it so well. It like saying like you like if you're trying to poke holes in this. Like I have not seen any of the other Exorcist films, but I've heard that the other ones are a lot less. They're a lot more incredulous with this stuff, or like they
they're
just
more
buy in,
heavy-handed.
heavy-handed,
That's
and this
that's very much what this did not feel like as a
right,
horror slasher whatever film. Like it followed none of those tropes
right,
until no, you know what? I'm going to pull back and say it followed none of those tropes because a lot of them hadn't been set up yet.
sure,
Like
sure, but
in
even
73, some of this like now canonized what we
yeah,
expect a film to be if it's psychological horror, classic horror, slasher, or B horror. Like none of these tropes were really solidified outside of film nerd circles. And back in the 70s, you weren't a film nerd unless you worked in film. Like
yeah,
there weren't casual film nerds that would get their hands on some celluloid that early and be able to
yeah,
watch it in their house. Like, no, it didn't
right,
exist. You had to go to the cinema, go to the movies, see a
yep,
movie. So it was just, it was just interesting that this set up so many of the jokes and the call outs that I've seen in films for decades now. I'm like, oh
yeah.
yeah, that is The Exorcist. Oh shit. Okay. So
So one thing about this movie that was leading to though is I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this, but one of my pet peeves in movies, and this you can go back a long time all the way up till the Marvel movies, is when you have a character. Typically, it's atheism, but it's not always. It doesn't always have to be atheism. It's any kind of skepticism, and they are Han Solo is a great example. Han being like, I've I I have I don't believe in one force, blah blah blah. And then like if at the beginning of Force Awakens he had said like, I don't know, man, like I don't know that they say there's a force. It's like you've seen the force now, and there's so many examples of movies. I feel like one there's a character in Independence Day and a character in the Marvel stuff where they're like, I don't believe in that, and it's like, okay, that made sense at the beginning. It no longer makes sense. You've now seen the thing, and we have so many characters in this movie who are like, well, it's not even Karis
yeah,
who is having a crisis of faith, which is a brilliant piece of writing too,
yeah, it is.
to give him the crisis of faith. It, we say like, oh, like it's not a demon, it's not a demon, and then
It's not.
like, and then them going, the part, what is Reagan's mother's name, in the movie? I know it's Ellen Burstyn, but I can't think of the character's name.
Chris.
Chris. So Chris goes to one person is like, I think it's something supernatural, and they're like, no, and she's like, the fucking bed was off of
Yeah,
you, like
I
that's from a
remember that
muscle
scene.
spasm,
Yep.
and they're like, okay, like, and I get why you'd be skeptical of a mom saying that. Then they see it and they're like, oh no, this is not a muscle spasm.
Yeah.
And like every single character does that thing of like, oh yeah, no, this isn't fake. Like,
Right.
whereas other movies, worse written movies, they would be like, I don't know, I'm not convinced yet.
It's
And
just so
you know,
obvious. It's so
yeah,
obvious. And when you were saying that's one of your peeves, it actually follows in line with one of mine. If I can guess the lines, I'm bored.
yeah,
If I can get, even in a comedy, even if I know the joke and I think the joke is funny, it is immediately not funny if I can guess it.
yeah.
And in the case of The Exorcist, at no point was I genuinely able to think, yeah, that's going to happen next. Yeah, that's going to happen next. No.
You had a couple of points that you wanted to talk about scenes specifically.
Yeah. So I've got four of them,
Yeah,
and I'll start with the first one, and this is funny because on another project that I work on with you, we've actually talked about this phenomenon before. I thought you'd like that.
It's like it's like a another personal pet peeve thing, but
What?
we don't have to get it. The Swiss thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so the Swiss thing. So there's a party at Chris's home, and Carl, which is her male help,
Yeah.
um, says, "I'm Swiss." When the director of the movie gets all up in his shit because he's drunk as a skunk, and I like how that just added so much like clear period just baggage and
Oh
drama
yeah.
that a World War II veteran would provide,
Yeah.
and it
So he calls him a
adds
Nazi the whole time. He
exactly.
keeps the whole scene. He's referring. Yeah, but for our audience, they don't necessarily know if they haven't seen it. But he's referring to him as a Nazi throughout the scene, drunkenly being like, "You Nazi!"
You
Like,
Nazi. How what was it like? What was it this? And my favorite part about it is when Carl says, "I'm Swiss." The director's face is like, "Sure you are. Right, you're Swiss. The guy who speaks German is Swiss." It was just like everything about the the way the director gives him shit is fucking great. And the
I
director has
liked
that
that scene a
lisp, which is
lot.
even better.
I liked that scene a lot, and I didn't think of it until I was reading through your notes. But it actually leads me to one thing that I think is it's actually the only negative I can think of at the moment about the movie is when that director later on dies.
Hmm.
The detective comes around, Lee Cobb comes around, to talk to investigate the death,
Yep.
and at no point really is there further talk about the fact that the victim of this killing was killed in a house where the person he was verbally accosting the night or nights before works.
No, right.
There
Like,
doesn't really come into investigation. Whereas I feel like, I mean, obviously Carl didn't do anything in this particular situation, but the cop would, like I feel like that's the one plot hole kind of piece is like they would have done a little more investigation, and people would have been like, oh yeah,
true.
what was the director's name? Denham or something? Something like that. He was like people would be like, oh yeah, he was drunkenly calling the guy a Nazi, like you know, and then like very quickly the guy dies with one of the only people there being the guy he called a Nazi, like that.
Yeah. And what I liked about that is Friedkin really, like, at no point was I questioning why the cop didn't ask, because the way that Friedkin had it, the way that Friedkin laid out that scene, there was no point at which I was thinking, yeah, but what about him? Like, I never
Oh
thought
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And,
For us, the audience, I absolutely think you're right. I think that makes 100% sense, and they do such an artful job of never bringing that back up
and it
that
doesn't matter.
I didn't think
I
I
didn't
didn't think of
care.
it until I saw your notes. But I think I think that what was his name? Detective's name Kinnaman or something? Kinman, something like that.
Kenman or Kinnaman, yeah.
Kinderman. Uh,
Kinderman.
Kinderman would have, probably investigated that, I would think. But that's all. That was my only point.
Yeah, but in this case, you're right. I didn't care. I'm like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, isn't it obviously Carl who killed him? You know,
yeah,
and then at no point was I really, at no point until right now did I question, well, wouldn't it have been? And then more importantly, even during the film, right to credits, I was never thinking, why didn't they talk to Carl? Like, no,
yeah,
never came up, never came up.
yeah, yeah.
So that's the "I'm Swiss" line that I thought was flippin' great. Because as soon as I was like, Mike's gonna think that's funny. Um, so in about 50 minutes in, because that's how I remember these. I wrote down time codes. Because I edit so much now. At 50 minutes in, uh, the although sound was a big part of this, the lighting in this scene kills it for me. So the two doctors the doctor and the doctor he brought in for consult for her baby, for her daughter. Chris is speaking in the hallway to these two men, and there's nearly zero motion in this scene. Motion meaning all the actors are standing bolt upright. No one's really in a relaxed state.
Right.
And all of the light for this scene you can tell is ambient from that window into the hallway, because that very same hallway we know has lights in it, because in other times it's either well lit or dimly lit because of probably the ceiling lights. So
Yep.
all that light's pouring in from this one window on the side, and almost all their faces are half lit.
Mm.
And the the DP gets both perspectives from both ends of the hallway, where you see just the doctors having one side of their faces lit. And because Chris is facing them, hers is completely the other side. And
Oh, that's cool.
and what I like about that is it frames her between these two doctors very much like these are the two sides that she's trying to consider for her daughter's treatment.
Yep. The
And
rational and the spiritual.
mhm,
Yeah.
and what I really like is those half dark faces add some like visual confession,
Hmm.
and the institution of science and medicine is almost kind of knowing it's going to fail, because we haven't really brought in Karis yet as a major part of her treatment or part of her connection.
Yep.
And it's just it's it's such a powerful scene when you consider the way that audio has been used. Is this half lighting is just, you know
Yeah.
um and then there was another meta moment for me outside of Chris being an actress, and that's when Kinderman is talking to Karis, and he says, "Hey, I like film. I like to talk film, discuss, to critique." And when he's walking, I think he's walking on the church grounds,
Yep.
and and the camera is just very delicate over the shoulder. It's a dolly shot. There's not a lot of technology used here. It's just two people talking,
Right.
and you do catch some sound there. So it's just ambient enough that you know they're outside, but it's not that deliberate folly kind of stuff where, like, it's been put in post, where it's kids playing in the background but it sounds like they're right in the room with you. Like it's not that deliberately loud sound design. And
Yeah.
then what you know what I'm gonna ask you, do, do you think Kinderman is an audience surrogate, or is he the film's trickster? Because that's that kind of meta. He says,
Honestly,
I like to talk film, I like to critique.
I think he's going to be more of the surrogate because if he's not the surrogate, he doesn't play that much of a role in the movie.
No,
Like I
yeah.
think that was something that was, you know what I mean? Like I think that was something that was surprising to me because I remembered him visually, like, he's in a lot of the visual things you think about with the movie. And then I was like, oh, he's really like not in this movie that much. And
Right. No, I
his
like that.
role, like, you could almost make this movie without him and not change the movie at all, right? Like there's scenes that would obviously not happen, but like the trajectory of the film doesn't change at all because of him.
No, you're okay.
Nobody, no character's individual trajectory changes because of him, and so it makes me think like, oh, that does make sense. That especially he comes in as things start to get weird
Yeah,
and start, the beginning half of the movie that he's not in. There's nothing weird for us as the audience to kind of question or be weirded about, like need explaining or like and we have that moment where where exorcism is explained to Chris, and then after that, all the other audience stuff that's to us is kind of to him. Um, and
yeah, okay,
like
yeah.
but I think that in a lot of ways, like I do think you could make the almost exact same movie without him. So I think that's why he's got to be for us.
And I almost think that he's definitely the closest thing that an audience is going to align and go along for the ride in his
Yeah,
head or in his character, because
yeah,
so much of his line of inquisition, so much of his more practical take
yeah,
on what's going on
yeah.
is very much what an audience would think. And also,
Right. Or a neighbor,
okay,
because
a curious
he sees
neighbor,
the
yeah,
priests, coming and going, and he knows that there was a death or a murder, but he does, like, at no point is demonic possession mentioned to him.
yeah.
All of the things that we as the audience kind of do get privy to, that the main characters do, he doesn't. So he is the, like, one person with of any, um one named character who is kind of not in on what's actually going on too.
Okay.
Like he would be like, if you were sitting there and you, like, looked out the window and saw that two priests went into your neighbor's house, and the
Yeah.
lights are flickering and stuff, like, he's getting that, like, so, like, he, whereas as to, even the doctors are like, maybe try an exorcism, and people come and check things out, and they're seeing the bed elevate, and he might see Reagan looking sick, but he never sees her even acting
No, you're right.
possessed. So he's
He's so
completely
removed from it. I think
right.
he is oh, now that you just said that, I
Yeah,
think he is almost the perfect outsider surrogate kind of
yeah,
attachment, because you're right. He's never in a scene with a possession. He's barely
right.
in the scene with he's barely in scenes with a
Yeah,
lot of the religious side. He more
yeah,
like he interviews Chris, he
yeah.
interviews Karis, but it's never in a very heavy gravity of the possession side of it. So
It's
no,
very early days on an investigation kind of
it
thing, where you're
is,
like, we're
yeah.
just literally just getting facts. Like, if you, like, at an accident, scene of an accident, you'd, like, take people's statements and nobody's a suspect. Like, you'd take, that's kind of what he's doing the whole movie. Like, obviously there's a
Yeah.
little more, he gets a little more in depth a couple times, but not much more. And so he never like, he mentions to Kara something about, would you protect, and he goes, well, then I would use, not I would use either doctor confidentiality, or priest, the power of confession
Yeah,
confidentiality,
I
whatever it
remember that.
took. um but, like, there isn't even a real accusation in there. Like,
No.
that's just kind of like a, what would you do to help your patient, or
Right.
your
It's almost like he's a bad cop. Like he's bad
it's
at
I
being a
think
cop.
it's more like, I'm not going to go piss people off until I have reason to piss them off.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
just gathering facts. It's like, it's almost like what we want cops to be, like
Oh.
unbiased
Right.
observers,
Right. No, no
who are
joke.
taking
No
notes.
joke. I like that take. That's good. So
So maybe that's the screenshot for this episode, is just, is Detective Kinderman the perfect on-screen cop?
I know, no, I straight like that. Is Detective Kinderman the best on-screen cop?
Yeah.
So, speaking of on-screen moments, my last cut is at an hour and 59. So we're right about 2 hours. The movie's only about 2 hours long.
Yeah.
This for
It's
me,
literally like the last
it
three or
is
four
the yeah,
shots.
it is the
Yeah.
last three or four shots. It is in the last it's in the last setting, which is outside of her brownstone as they're moving away, because so much has happened and her daughter is healed now. We have
Yeah.
Reagan back. Uh, for me, this is the Coda moment. So she outside, it's fall because because everybody's breath you could see, right? And Reagan looks at Father Dyer, which was the close friend of Kinderman, no, not Kinderman, Karras, the close friend of
Karis,
Karras, and
who kind of got her in touch with Karis as well.
yeah, yeah, he very much put the two together. and he's a bit of a recluse. He's Father Dyer is a little bit of living on the edge, and that's why I liked that he was in this final scene, because you grew up Catholic, so you could have those priests that were dyed in the wool Catholics, but
Hmm.
then you have the ones that are younger and clearly live one foot in the secular world, and
Yeah.
then one foot in the non secular world.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Dyer
The people who
felt,
had a life before going to the
yeah,
like the priest that married my sister and my brother-in-law. I've known him for a very long time because my mom worked for the church for like almost 20 years. That priest was an Air Force pilot, and he was really religious, and they would like literally call him Father G, even though he wasn't a priest yet, because he was like the only one who could handle G forces. And I feel like every church had, like you saying, like the guy who was always a priest, like from the moment he could be, and then the guy who was like, I've lived in the real world. There was always that pairing. Like
yeah,
every church has that pairing, and so the movie has that pairing. I mean, I think Marin is the odd man out in this. Karras and Karras is kind of like, I've always been here, and I'm leaning out, and this guy is like, I have lived my life, and now I'm kind of leaning in, like I'm, like they're converging, and Marin being like. Marin, we learned very little about him other than like he's almost yeah, he's like the if priests are doctors, he's like the specialist. Like he's like the surgeon coming in to perform brain surgery. Like
yeah, yeah.
you know,
And he's very much like the late arriving Dr. House kind of situation, right?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
So for me, I liked how Father Dyer was in this last scene, but he's
yeah,
also this dude. Like I remember when he goes and visits Karis, he's like, "How did you get a bottle of Chivas Regal?
yeah,
Did you rob the offertory or something?" And he's like, "I'll never tell." Like it was very much how that
yeah.
scene went. So
They showed them as real people in a way that a lot of times I feel like is only done. Like they're real people in a time before a lot of scandal. So like
yeah,
now when we see them as real people, we see them as real bad people, or we see them as just priests. But this was like these are guys who drink and have
and,
fun, but are
true,
priests.
but and also the only time in most films that you see specifically Catholic clergy depicted is they're either depicted as these offertory saints for us to exalt in the
Mm-hmm.
film, or they are the or they are the entirety of the film because they're having a fall from grace, sort of like
Yeah,
Karras did. No, no, sorry, not fall from grace, fall from religion. So
yeah,
we got off on a tangent. Big surprise. Welcome to Cinnamon. So there was a big moment. Reagan's outside. She looks at Father Dyer. She's talking to him. And then there's an extreme close up on his clergy collar. Like, I mean, it's close enough you can see like the cuts from where he
oh yeah, yeah,
shaved that morning. Like, it was
yep, yep.
alarmingly close. And she,
I thought so. Go ahead. Sorry.
she almost, and Reagan has this moment where I feel it was almost out of body because she's obviously a 12-year-old girl, so she's much shorter than Father Dyer, and she leans in and kisses his cheek
Yeah,
with no
I think.
words, no lines, no dialogue, just and then gets in the car and goes. Like that's
Yeah,
it. And for me, it was close framing, but it was extreme close up on that collar. You
yeah,
hear all the noises outside, like you're watching this like a neighbor,
yeah,
and you've got faith, motherhood, and just the residue of religion and holiness that's left over, just like all
So
together.
I read it a little different. I thought that the close up on the collar was supposed to as make us as the audience kind of, like how a lot of horror movies have like the hand comes back,
Yeah.
whatever that clawback moment,
Hmm.
like or at the end of Nightmare on Elm Street, like the convertible closes with the stripes from,
Yeah.
and you have that like, oh, it's not over even though you thought it was over. I thought it was gonna it zoomed in on his collar, and that was gonna trigger her to like trigger Pazuzu in
Oh.
her, and be like, oh, because it's also this is 2025. We've now had 5 Exorcist movies, and
Yeah,
Linda
I think it's
Blair
5.
is at least in the second one, if not some of the other ones. But so we know that she's not done, like to some extent. But
Yeah,
like
yeah,
even in the moment, like knowing that trope of horror movies to throw in a flash of it ain't over yet. Um, that's what I thought it was going to be, and then the kiss on the cheek was just like the psych, like
yeah.
we
Okay,
fucked with you.
and in my notes, that's kind of how it read for me because I was like, is Regan still possessed?
Yeah,
Like
that's
that's kind of how I read it
it's
too.
leaving like a little bit of like of ambiguity. That's
If
how I
she
read it.
remembers nothing, what is this gesture? Is it
Yeah.
muscle memory? Is it Pazuzu again? Is it just I'm a 12-year-old girl of a wealthy family and we're saying goodbye? Like, what do? I kiss the priest on the cheek. Of course I do. You know.
Yeah.
So I read it some of that way too. But
Yeah.
but how you explained it, where now we know there's sequels, there's absolutely this kind of feeling of she's clearly not done, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to watch this film with director's commentary, but the version I got does not have that. I would like to hear like cast or director commentary be like, oh yeah, no, that was intentional because we were gonna make a sequel. We just didn't have the funding or we didn't have a slate for it
Yeah.
yet. So yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
those are my three biggies.
Okay. So I have one thing I want to talk about that. So I want to talk about stairs. Visually, this
About
movie
stare.
this movie does a lot with stairs,
It does.
which I
Oh,
think
it does a lot with
it,
stairs.
well, it makes it, I think it makes some of the best visual, like like the poster. I'm trying to think. Is the poster the stairs that Karis like leaps down? Okay, it's not. I was misremembering that. But like there is stairs indoor and outdoor. First of all, so like that's maybe partly why they picked Georgetown, was it has like an interesting
It does.
dynamic for action. But like you get the stairs shots are where the two of the three deaths happened within view of the of those
Yeah, that's why I was
stairs,
like,
like
yeah,
jump.
stairs do a lot here, Mike.
Yeah, yeah. But then also, one of my favorite shots in the whole movie is after the first session of exorcism, when Marin is like, "Let's take a break. You need a break," and they go and they're sitting on the stairs, and because it's those like almost like split level style stairs,
Yeah.
you get like a half set and then a half set coming down the opposite direction.
Hmm.
You've got Marin sitting above, Kara sitting below, but it allows us to get like the camera then shows from the right side of Karas's face, left side of Marin's face, and we're seeing them in like profile, like kind of both like the reaction to it. Then the cutbacks are the opposite, like, and it's a visual. We're used to shot reverse shot. We're used to over the shoulder, and sometimes you'll get like like visually what it looks like to me right now is like we're sitting next to each other in a car. There's all these ways of showing interaction, and this was this really specific to this movie setup, which shows that they're facing different directions. One's above the other. Like it has all these layers, and I can't believe that it was incidental. I think it had to be intentional that we have Marin is above Karis, and Karis, the weight of the world is on him. He's sunken low, and
Yeah.
Marin is just is above him, and he's go
Agreed.
ahead.
And in that same scene, after the first, where they read the rite of exorcism the first time, the point of view is down on the first floor as he's walking
Mm-hmm.
down that staircase. So that adds some visual and theoretical distance between the two
Yeah,
of them.
yeah,
And further, I think it had to have been intentional because there was a
yeah.
lot of intentional framing
Yeah,
that
and
was
very
used.
clear use of space. Like I felt
Yeah,
like I understood the space.
I
So
knew
like
why it's there. It's
in
not
that,
just, oh, this was the easy place to stand and shoot this. No, it was intentional
yeah,
that you're in the bottom of a stairwell.
but also like
You know.
where Reagan is at that moment.
Hmm.
So Marin's here, Karis is here. Reagan is higher than them, right behind. Like, Karis is facing the direction of Reagan, even though he's looking kind of down. She's there to his perspective,
Yeah,
and he's looking this way, and Marin is facing away from her.
he is. Yeah,
And so like and that's like immediately visually apparent without it being called out, which
yeah,
is like, you know, like, I listened to a thing recently in the last maybe this was a year ago, where they said one of the reasons why James Cameron is so amazing at action is that you always know where things, you know, like you can follow the flow of a battle or a chase scene or whatever, and other
yeah.
directors sometimes struggle because they want to do flashier cuts or do things that'll, you know, and it takes you you're like, well, where am you're disoriented. And they said one of the most powerful things you can do is if you're not trying to disorient your audience, is to keep them oriented the whole time. And this movie did an amazing job with
It
keeping
does.
things oriented spatially. I feel like we knew that Chris is downstairs during that, because otherwise they would have made a point. You know, she's waiting downstairs, and they may have even shown cutaways during those scenes, so we know that like the levels are there and who's facing what direction to some extent, and it's really like masterful in it doesn't call itself out at all, but you absolutely know where everyone is in that moment.
No, you do, and there's a clear and intentional use of that throughout the film. Like it, it, the detective walking all the way up the murder stairs and like
Yeah,
getting winded by the time he got to the top of them, like gave that.
yeah,
Actually, that is the first time in the film where I think it becomes a little more obvious to the audience how long this stairwell is
yeah,
and how
yeah,
far down these two people fell before they met their demise.
yeah.
So I really think that although sound is the focus for this episode, that there is clear
Oh yeah,
intentional use of film and space, and the idea that a director or a DP that's not afraid of emptiness and doesn't
yeah,
have to cram the scene with so many set pieces and so much going on that it feels like, it feels like you're flicking through Twitter at 90 miles an hour. Like it's just
yeah.
that there's not a lot going on, and that is entirely intentional. And this film getting getting the number of awards it got, there's really no question in an average cinephile's mind of why. Like, no, it makes
Oh yeah.
sense. And I think it's interesting that us as people who live in North Carolina, the clear Pazuzu connection with the guy that was put to death, the murderer who was put to death only, I think it was 2015. Yeah, it was
I didn't
2015.
live here yet, so I don't know.
Yep. Pazuzu Algarad was the given name of an individual that was born John Alexander Lawson, who committed some murders and then he died in the Central Prison in Raleigh,
Oh damn.
probably about 20 minutes from where we're both sitting.
Oh damn.
Yep.
Oh okay.
Seduced by Satan is the name of the book, and I don't think there's an official movie, but I think that the Devil You Know is probably the closest thing to
Yeah.
it, like current day, and that was a doco that was released in 2019.
Who do you think would win in a fight? Pazuzu or Gozer? Do you know who Gozer is?
I'm embarrassed. No,
Ghostbusters.
Gozu.
Gozer is the woman who comes through with the crew cut in the like very 80s like
Oh,
lycra, and
that's Gozer. Sorry, I was like,
it
who?
also a Sumerian god. That's why I was wondering. Like, Do we have
Um,
Gozer versus Pazuzu,
in this film, Pazuzu is not really that ominously scary.
or
Now,
that powerful? We don't. I mean, we don't see as much power exerted. Like
yeah,
we don't see them
we,
Stay Puft Marshmallow Man going through the city. We like it. She said, I don't know if Pazuzu is a man or a woman, so I'm going to refer to she because of Reagan. But she says the thing about he goes, well, then just let yourself out, and I would never use such a gross display or of my power, or something about like it being like almost gauche to
yeah,
use that kind like, and so like we don't know what, but I just thought that was funny because I was like, I think in my head I was like, what is the Ghostbusters demon? I feel like it's the same as Sumerian. I feel like it's Sumerian as well, so
it
it was just
is,
funny.
and the intention and method of both of those films, so Ghostbusters from 1984 and The Exorcist from 1973, were a decade later in film and an entirely different intention with directing and just overall audience reception. And I think Gozer, from their first movie appearances, so Pazuzu in The Exorcist and Gozer in Ghostbusters, I'm gonna say Gozer's gonna kick Pazuzu's butt because of the way that they're depicted in their initial films.
Yep.
Now, actual lore, I don't know enough about them, but if you say red-eyed,
Yeah.
crazy lycra suit looks like she's in the labyrinth, Gozer, and then a stone statue that's poorly lit that's found in the middle of an Iraqi desert.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's Gozer, like between those two.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about one more thing before we kind of wrap up and tease next week.
You
Um,
said rap.
so one of the things that I was realizing when I was looking at the first three movies that we're going to be talking about is that these are all big name directors, which I don't think we
That
always
is
think of
true.
with horror movie. Now, this movie is William Friedkin had already won the Oscar for
Yes.
French Connection, so this is almost like the opposite of trajectory of some of the next two directors, but because he went from prestige film to horror,
Yeah.
it made a prestige horror. Next week we're going to be talking about Rosemary's Baby, which is Roman Polanski, who went and made a few horror movies, kind of culminating in Rosemary's Baby, and then from Rosemary's Baby goes on to make Chinatown and The Pianist and a bunch of like high prestige film. Now, again, Rosemary's Baby is a horror prestige film because it
That's true.
also won some Oscars and not just like technical. I mean, like it won an acting Oscar, so
Yeah.
like it's not just technical. Neither of these films was technical. And then next the week after that, we're going to be watching Evil Dead, which is Sam Raimi's first film. And Sam Raimi's not the same level of prestige as these guys, but Sam Raimi went on to have a huge out of horror career. Spider-Man movies. I know Doctor Strange 2 was kind of horror comic
Yeah.
book movie, but like,
Adjacent. Yeah.
and that, but he also did like there was some like heist movies and stuff, and like that were that like I think something we should end up talking about at some point in the future is the fact that the '90s had a thing that we're sorely missing right now, which is those like middle level thrillers that like were awesome, and if you pick them up today, you'll still like them, but people don't necessarily remember. So like you think about like I recently
Okay.
watched The Rainmaker or Primal Fear, or like there's a lot of those. They're not the Forrest Gumps and the Pulp Fictions and the big name things. They're like, and then they're not B movies. They're just like
Yeah.
A minus. These A
Good
minus movies that,
films, but
yeah,
not necessarily the top work of anybody who was involved, but
yeah,
good films. Yeah.
right, right. And
Okay.
Sam Raimi, I think, has some entries into that category.
You
That's why
know,
I brought him.
no, I'll agree with you there because with with Rosemary's Baby, Roman Polanski being one of the more divisive characters in cinema and just in life, Um, do you remember anything about his first film?
I have not seen. So the only movie I've seen from him, and as of right now, I have not watched all of Rosemary's Baby. I watched the first 20 minutes or so. But the only movie I've seen of his all the way through is Chinatown.
Okay. So his very first film was called Break Up the Dance. And it was like very much a guerrilla style film
Hmm.
because he told one half of the cast, here, you're at a lavish party. And then he hired people to intentionally crash the party and like threaten people and stuff.
Yeah,
And then literally filmed the reaction of these actors who thought they were there to be at a lavish party. It was made in 57. It's only 8 minutes long. And it is so interesting that a dude that far back, I mean, yes, a disturbed individual, but a dude that far back that he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to basically put people in a box and then see how they react when I piss them off. Like that is
yeah,
absolutely what his method was. So I really think it's not a good film. It's a good film nerd film, but it is not a good film by any respect.
yeah,
And it was a stunt that he came up with when he was in film school, and it just
yeah,
so that's his
yeah,
first. So no, Rosemary's Baby is a little more slick in the way that it's filmed. It's very much of its time, being 68. So even though it is a few years before, it is more of that late 60s, early 70s, high level of polish kind
yeah,
of a film. But also, what's interesting is the use of color is so strong in comparison. We're going to be focusing on writing, but don't think my like how do they shoot it, how do they do it nerd brain's not going to be like, okay, Rosemary's Baby is bright in
yeah,
comparison to how crushed the dynamic range in The
yeah.
Exorcist is. There's not a lot of like there's only two
No,
scenes in The Exorcist that popped out color wise to me.
yeah,
Rosemary's Baby has so much intentional use of color in that film.
yeah, yeah.
uh, One of my upcoming favorite films that we're going to probably end up doing, um, Amelie, has a big use of color. So we'll get to that in time, folks. We'll get to that in time. We're just excited that you're even joining us for our first episode.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us for our first episode. And next week, like we just mentioned, we're going to be watching Rosemary's Baby. We're going to do horror all month long for October. We figured that's how we wanted to launch the show. Um, Thanks again. Please, if you haven't already, hit like and subscribe.
We would appreciate it.
If you're listening to us on Spotify or whatever podcast app, hit follow, whatever that is on your app, and just keep listening we're going to try to keep ahead on the schedule so you can watch along with us if you want. And if people get into it, we can even say what our focus is going in so that you can try to look out for that too.
Oh yeah,
It won't be the only thing we talk about, as is clear from this episode, but it's what we're going into with a focus on so that we can kind of have some
yeah,
kind of anchor point. Obviously, we noticed a lot of stuff about The Exorcist, and I'm
we
sure
did,
we will with all of our films
we
that we're
did.
going to be covering.
So
So it was great having you. I hope to see you next week.
join us for Rosemary's Baby, new building, same evil, paranoia, lullabies, and neighbors who don't knock.